Well, hey, I'm going to the grocery and pick up a couple of things. I'm not really going in, I'm just going and pick up curbside. But I just thought I'd take you along. We're going to have a weekend adventure with Grandkids, and it's going to be fun. We are going to cook till we drop because they like to eat. And tonight we're going to do something really special to them. They love when they come and we make homemade pizza. Now, of course, they like pizza by all the different pizza companies. They're good with that. But what they like most of all is to be able to make it themselves. So, we're going to work on the crust. We're going to get that all put together, and I will wait, and they get to do the toppings. So that's going to be the fun part. And of course, guess who else gets to come? You. So stay tuned. I'm Leona Dooley, and this is Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme. Back to the kitchen of Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme, where we work hard, we love God and family, and we know that everything else is just gravy. So please come back, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon right here. Okay, let's talk about the cast iron pan. Now, this is a large 8-inch cast iron pan. Well, as I said, this weekend we are spending time with the grandkids, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But you know what? When they're coming, that means preparation. And I have been into my cast iron pans, whether it's a skillet, whether it's a griddle, it doesn't matter. I like cast iron. And so I have worked today with my cast iron pan, and so I made rolls first, and I put those rolls over in the cast iron pan because the kids like rolls, and I actually made them here. And so I will link videos below for where I make rolls, and so that you will have those recipes as well, because let me tell you, the cast iron pan puts out a beautiful pan of rolls. Then I fried some chicken fingers, because you know chicken fingers are always good with kids, and we have one little one who is a little picky about what she eats, and as much as she says she likes pizza, she likes the chicken fingers even better. So I did some chicken fingers. And then we needed biscuits because my oldest granddaughter loves biscuits. And I made, as you can see, several pans of biscuits. And this was actually just one recipe, but they turned out great. And I didn't make them gigantic. I made them child size. So they were just perfect for them. So the cast iron skillet has been busy. I've also linked down below the video that I really went into more depth with the cast iron on caring for it, things to do, things not to do. And I hope you'll stop and take a look at that as well. Now, before we go any further, please take a moment, and if you're not a part of our family, please hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss a moment. All right, let's get this pizza crust put together. Now first, these are the cans that I'm going to be using. I've got a can of diced tomatoes, and I also have a can of tomato sauce, the little can, and some herbs of Provence that are going to go in there. Those are your Italian seasonings that will be in the pot that I'll have on the stove. And I'm showing you those now because once everything gets to moving and the kids get here, things are going to move very quickly. Now, we're putting this pizza crust together, and you're going to look at it and go, this is quite different. But I promise you, it is going to be wonderful. So we're adding in about 3.5 cups of flour. And we're doing that because we're going to be spreading these into about, I think they're quarter sheet pans. I'm going to use 2, and rather than a half sheet pan because that's just a little too big. So I'm going to use the pan that's underneath the bowl. I have 2 of those. I'm going to use those 2. And as you can see, it's already covered with parchment paper. All right, so we're going to add that half cup in. There we go. Now, we're also going to need some additional items. You know, it's pizza crust. We are going to need a little bit of yeast, and I'm putting things aside, kind of getting them out of your way. I have warm water. I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of oil to that water. And no, it's not really for the purpose of mixing them, but actually we need 4 tablespoons, sorry. 4 tablespoons of oil, and that's because this is a big batch. And so you could certainly cut this in half, and it would be so much easier, but I'm just putting all the liquids together. So when they go in, they're going to kind of go in all at the same time. So we're just taking all that over and sticking it off to the side so I'll have easy cleanup. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir, even though I know they're actually not mixing because, you know, oil and water don't mix. So we've got our flour. We need, I had to keep my notes because there are lots of things to go in. So we need dry milk powder, and I will have the exact measurements down below so that you can do this. Keep some dry milk powder always on your shelf because I use it quite a bit in baking, and it really makes a difference in the quality of what you're baking. Now, I'm also adding in sugar, and these are a few tablespoons of sugar. Then I decided at the last minute I'd put a little bit in the water just to give it a little more tension. And there's our sugar taken care of. I've got our salt, and that's Himalayan pink salt that I'm going to put on one side of the bowl. And I'll put the yeast over on the other side of the bowl. And for this particular recipe, I had measured out the yeast I think it was 2 1/4 teaspoons, and I put it in the freezer just so they would stay well. So as you can see, the top is a little stiff, but we're going to get it out of there and put it off to the side. Now, I have a feeling I was a little off with that yeast, but anyway, like I said, it's down below. I did my pre-measurements last night, and so I'm putting everything together. So I'm going to use the back of the spoon, and I am going to give everything a good mix. And I just want to mix all of that together. And what will happen, it will disperse that salt very quickly. Typically, you wouldn't put the salt in until the end because you don't want to interfere with the work of the yeast. But in this case, because it's a pizza dough rather than rolls or bread, then we're okay to do that. So I'm just mixing up all of the dry ingredients really good. Then I'm going to make a well in the center, and I'll pour in our liquids. And I'm going to pour those liquids in very slowly because I want a good texture, but I just want to make sure, sometimes our flour is not exactly the same as you change from brand to brand. And some flours drink more moisture and more water, whatever it may be, than others. Sunflowers are very dry and need lots of liquid, whereas other flours are able to accommodate an exact measurement. That doesn't always happen. So we have our well, and I'm trying to make sure you have a good view. So there's our well in the center that we're putting in. And when you see this dough, you're going to go, that's interesting. Now I'm giving it one more little stir. And the reason for the oil is because, remember, it's a pizza dough. So you'll see that it's going to puff, but it's not going to have that rise that you would expect in a dough that you would put together for just a regular loaf of bread or for rolls. So there are several things in this recipe that are increased in order to make this pizza dough perfect. So you can see I'm just moving around. I don't even need to use a mixer. This is going to be the shaggiest dough that you have probably worked with ever. So get your muscles on, because you've got a lot of flour and dough, and like I said, I'm trying to just add a bit until I get it all in there. And it's going to be a shaggy dough as well as a very wet dough. Wet and sticky. That's exactly what it was. So there we go. You can see it's very liquidy, but it's going to work. Now, to be honest with you, while we're at this point, we'll talk about, we are going to put this pizza together with the kids. I'm going to let them put the dough in the pans. They're going to put the toppings on, and I will try to give you as much of that as I can. But when you have several little ones that are all trying to gather around a spot, it's a little tough to film. So I'm not sure how much good footage that I'll be able to show you, because it may look more like mass chaos, but we got a lot of things done. So they did great. They got everything taken care of. So I gave it a minute, kind of walked around a moment, and that was just to allow the flour to do a little absorbing. Now look at how wet this is. And I still have water and a tiny bit of oil in the measuring pan, in the measuring bowl. And so I'm just mixing and mixing, and it almost looks like a cake batter. But you know what? It's going to come together. Now I'm going to put a wet tile over the top of this, and I'm going to let it rise just like we would regular bread. And the reason for that is it needs time to do that. We have to treat it as if it's bread. It will rise even though it's so wet, and it's going to look like a regular batch of rolls. But once we start to put it into the pan, we're not going to roll it out. We're going to use our hands to press this dough out completely into two pans. So I'm literally going to divide it in half and just press until I get all of the dough in. Now, with this recipe, and like I said, I put the recipe at the end, you're going to have to press it into the pans. You're going to bake it, and we're going to bake it for about 6 to 8 minutes, and then we're going to take it out, put all of the toppings on, and then we'll put it back in and let it complete its baking time. Now, I wanted you to see that these biscuits that I made for in the morning, and I've already put those together, and they are in the pan. I've had a chance to let them rest for just a moment. I'm slathering them with butter, and they're going to go into the oven. So I just took time enough to do that, and I wanted you to see what I had done. So let's get them ready, and I'm ready to move on to our next part. I pre-prepared the Italian sausage, and so I've got a mild Italian sausage there that's already cooked in the pan. So over on the other eye, I have a rather small pan. Now in this pan, I poured in the diced tomatoes, the tomato sauce, gave it a really good shake with the Italian herbs, and in fact I left them in there together for quite a while, to be honest with you, in the refrigerator, just so that all the flavors could get through the mixture. I found that I had some fresh tomatoes that I had cut for a salad and didn't use, and so I'm also going to put those into this pan. Now the reason for doing that is, number one, is going to add a bit of freshness, and just going to add a lot of good tomato flavor, which is what you want. And you want that sauce to be thick. So I added just a little bit, just a tiny bit of water down into that jar, just to make sure we rinsed it out good. All Italian mamas do that. They make sure that that jar or can has been rinsed, and that's what we did, was to make sure that all of our tomato goodness was in this pan. Now this is going to need a good 15 minutes for it to really start to come together, and you'll be able to tell once it starts to really bubble. Then you're going to start to stir, because you don't want it to stick. And I've turned the heat up a little bit high at this point because I want it to get started, but not high enough for it to burn on the bottom, because it can burn very quickly, and so we didn't want that. So that's why we're taking our time as we prepare this sauce. And I mean, I had plenty of other things to do between the biscuits and the pizza dough and all those things, and preparing the meat. I had to cut the onion. I cut up some green peppers. Now, needless to say, the kids did not want, for the most part, at least the younger one, didn't want the green pepper and the onion. So that went on one pan. The other pan was just strictly meat, the tomato sauce, and the cheese, lots of cheese. So we are just putting all of that together, and you're going to see how quickly it will change. Now, we've talked about tasting as you go. And so I thought it needed some additional herbs of Provence, and especially after I had added the fresh tomatoes in, it needed a pinch of salt, because tomatoes don't come salted. It needed a little more garlic powder, and I even added in a tiny bit of sugar, because I just wanted to take any bitterness that may come about sometimes with tomatoes. I didn't want that. And then I let it simmer. Now here we are with pizza one. Pizza one, as you can see, we've pressed the dough out, we've taken care of the baking, and we've added the meat, the tomato sauce, and now we're sprinkling that cheese. And my grandson is being very particular about where that cheese goes. And so we're just sprinkling. Everyone's watching carefully because they're ready for that pizza to get back in the oven. And you can see how it's puffed a little. And this is the second pizza that had all the good ones. This is after pizza one and pan two. It's gone. And here are my babies. They had a great time of games and fun. I hope you have had an absolutely fun time with Ebony, Ivy, and Time and the grandkids. And so I'm going to tune off and have a great time, put my feet up, and relax. So I'll see you soon right here in the kitchen.